500 Doors, your real estate podcast. Speaking with industry experts in real estate buying, selling, planning, developing, wholesaling, investing, financing, management. If it's real estate, we're talking about it. I'm your host, Kim Hayden, an award-winning 6- and 7-figure real estate agent with over 2 decades of experience. Understanding real estate is a dream for many, that we, real estate professionals, have the ability to bring that dream to reality while building better communities and being the change we want to see. Chris Molenaar is a top agent in Saskatoon, Canada. He's a 2 times Icon Award winner with EXP and was actually the first agent to join EXP in Saskatoon. That's pretty gutsy, eh? Being the first of anything shows you're an innovator. He managed to build a real estate team here, there locally, and recently surpassed 100 agents in his real estate group. Chris teaches real estate lead generation and social media marketing to real estate agents across Canada and internationally. So let's bring him in, and I will re-record that opening without the frog in my throat for our post.
All good.
Welcome to the show, Chris. How are you
Yeah.
today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am fantastic. Thank you for asking. You know, it's warm here in Saskatoon today. It almost feels like Calgary.
You know what? Calgary was pretty sweet yesterday. Like the snow's melting. I'm just sure it's in time for another freeze, but what can you do?
That's how it
So
goes.
so we were talking a bit before the show, and Chris, you're not an original Saskatoonite. What do they call you guys?
I'm still learning myself. Saskatoonian. I don't know.
Saskatoonian. Okay.
I don't know.
Folks, we're just going to go with it. Canada's got some of the most original names. We're not it's a good thing you're in Saskatoon and not the other major city in Saskatchewan.
Right.
So, and if you don't know what that is, message me. Okay, so Chris, walk us through a little bit about who you are, because I believe who we are helps build into what we do.
Yeah. So I'm just a regular, average guy, the same as anybody else. I grew up in a small town in British Columbia, probably about 4 hours from Calgary, and I graduated in Cranbrook. I grew up in a small town called Jaffrey, BC. A very middle class family. And a big part of why I'm proud of my story is because it's one that if he can do it, I can do it. So when you hear my story, you're like, this dude just literally put in the work day after day, week after week, year after year. And in spite of setbacks and even with a huge learning curve in front of him, maybe the odds stacked against him, he managed to pull through and still is. It's still just the beginning. But I really like to share my story, and I really like to break it down because I kind of feel like along the way, I learned a lot of what got me to where I am today the hard way, because I feel like one of my biggest gifts is the fact that I can learn anything, and I can learn it well enough that I can teach it. But it seems to me that it takes me a little longer to learn things sometimes. So it's a kind of a gift and a curse. So I've kind of started from scratch in most of what I've done in my business life, for sure, in many areas of my life. But it's also, I think, a really great gift because it enables me to turn around and teach it with anybody else that wants to learn and put in the work. And because of all the additional steps along the way that I've taken, no matter where you are in your process, there's a very good chance that you have more of a head start than I did when I started. And so with that, I'm really, really excited to help, anyone along the way in their journey, in real estate and in life too.
So you
So,
talk about Head Start. So let's talk a little bit. How long were you in Saskatoon before you started real estate?
yeah, I moved to Saskatoon when I was a 19-year-old kid, 19-year-old young man, I guess you might say. And I literally had the clothes on my back. I had a duffel bag and I had probably a car that was worth about $800, which I soon shortly thereafter crashed. So I had no car. It was rode off and I had no place to live. I had my girlfriend at the time and I wanted to start a new life. So I was literally door knocking, looking for a place to work, I was door knocking, looking for a place to live, cold calling, I guess in the newspaper it was back then still. And unbeknownst to me at the time, looking back now, that was the beginnings of my career in sales, learning how to sell yourself. And so I was fortunate enough to reach out to one of my relatives who was is almost kind of like a long lost relative. It's not that we weren't close, we just were not in close touch. And so I basically told her the story, and she let me into her home. She had four small kids at the time, and I lived there for six months, and that really humbled me and forced me to become, I think, a responsible role model to a certain extent. Not that I was or wasn't at 19 years old at that time, but definitely forced me to pull up my socks, so to speak. And I always say that I was born and raised in BC, but I really grew up in Saskatchewan. And so Saskatoon is definitely home for me now. And, I came from a trades family, but I was the only non mechanically inclined of the bunch. I have four other siblings, and I'm the only one that had absolutely no interest in tools. I'm the middle child. But I was the first to get my trades ticket. So I basically was cold calling, looking for a place to work. I found a job as a sheet metal worker, basically duct sealing, venting and duct work with this, oil-based glue for 8 hours a day. Was the job I could find, but I took that and turned it into, an opportunity to get a trades ticket as a sheet metal worker, and I got out of the trades as quickly as I got into them. Part of the reason why, after I got my journeyman ticket, I moved into real estate. Part of the reason why I left is because I actually ruptured my Achilles tendon, which was an 8 month recovery. And then once I'd recovered from rupturing my left Achilles tendon, I broke it playing volleyball. And I was going for a beer after being back to work with some of my colleagues, jumping around on my other stronger foot, showing off how strong I was, and busted the other one. So I don't know if that was God speaking and saying, "You're not meant to be in this business anymore. Move on with your life." I don't know,
That
but
is sorry, I don't mean to
it
laugh at you.
is
I'm laughing with
it
you
is
because
funny.
I did
Yeah,
virtually the same thing in 8th grade with both of my ankles. Both my ankles, trashed them both inside of 90 days. So, either go
yeah.
big or go home, right?
It's life is. And when you're young, you feel, oh, I'm indestructible, all this kind of stuff. And I'm making good money, and I didn't go to post secondary. I had my trade, which was great, but it was like that was the beginning of my self directed education. So I remember when my girlfriend at the time, when I was young, 20-year-old kid, she had her life together. She was a few years older than me. She had 2 degrees and owned her own condo. And I was basically renting a room and board. And I was a first year apprentice sheet metal worker. Essentially, I was a laborer. And I was selling her on this dream. Like, look at me. We should stick it out because, I'm great. I could be whatever I want to be. Got my whole life ahead of me. And she says, well, good. Well, basically called my bluff, so to speak. She took me to the bookstore and said, if you want to, make something of yourself financially, you we're not leaving until you buy a business book. So I bought Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that was the beginning of my self-directed education. For a large portion of the next 10 years, I read a book a week. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in seminars and sales training and coaching and public speaking. And to me, that's one of the biggest gifts that I've ever had is committing to a personal development um, schedule regime, because it helps you in business, it helps you financially, but it helps you in relationships and in life in so many different ways. And it's the real skill sets of life that if you aren't taught growing up, you have to go about it your own way in order to learn. And I kind of feel like you really can't be successful without the simple skills such as your ability to communicate with people. And when I was 19 years old, I certainly did not have those skills naturally. So that was a big part of my journey, was learning it kind of the hard way, one brick at a time, one experience at a time, one conversation at a time. And I really, really had to push my comfort zone to learn how to become a salesperson. It was
Ho
not natural.
So how old were you when you started real estate?
So 4-year trade. So I moved here in
Mhm.
1920. So then I spent 4 years in the trades. I think it was 2013. Um, I think I was 24, 25, something like that. And back then in
Perfect.
2013, that was young for agents. I know there's a lot of young agents joining the
Yep.
business now. And with social media and the internet, it wasn't the same as it was back in
No.
2013. So I was a young agent, you know, considering the
Oh
times.
yeah. Oh yeah. I when I started, I was 29 and I was the youngest in
Yeah.
the office. So I
Yeah, yeah,
get
yeah.
that. So quick question for you, introvert or extrovert?
Definitely, definitely introvert. I can tell you seem to be more extroverted.
Oh, I'm crazy extroverted.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I scare introverts.
That's
Or
okay.
or all my friends are introverts and want to go to all the business networking with me because I'm the one that
Yes.
walks around and does all the, "Oh, by the way, have you met Angela? She's an amazing brand strategist. You've got to meet Angela." And Angela comes up, right? so
That's
so I'm
awesome.
the one that I'm the wingman. I'm the wingman for
Yes.
introverts. So, okay, so an introvert. So I want to go through this. So with you not growing up and not having extent lots of family in Saskatoon. So that when we talk about spheres of influence, and I think that a lot of new agents aren't going through that traditional training because technology came in 2006 and everything then was on social media. However, there was the traditional training back before that around exploration of your spheres of influence and understanding all the different opportunities. But you didn't have a sphere of family there. You didn't have a sphere of past school there. You didn't have a sphere of extended, like lifelong friends or anything like that. And those are typically the first three that real estate brokers will teach real estate agents to
Yes.
tap into when they
Yes.
start their business. And then we compound that as an introvert. Walk me through what we're going to do is we're going to help a new agent today.
Yes.
Walk me through if you're new to a city, which we're seeing a lot of people moving around right now. Since COVID, there's been this kind of shift. Where do I go? Where can I live? So if you're sitting there and you want to go into real estate and you have no friends and family sphere that you can lean into or past education sphere, what are some of the strategies that helped you get your first 10, 12 listings?
Yeah. You know what? That's really great. I appreciate bringing that up. And so, first and foremost, I would say, especially if you're young, go out and buy a suit. Guy or girl, buy a suit. I didn't own a suit when I started. I felt uncomfortable and awkward wearing a suit because I'd never worn a suit in my entire life. But when you show up to the door, if you're 18 years old wearing a suit, they're perfect. First thing they're thinking is there's a professional at my door, right? If you're showing up wearing your street clothes, they're going to be like, get off my porch, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. And so I say this: you're better off. You're going to learn more from knocking on 10,000 doors than you are from any coach, real estate sales coach anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with public speaking. Throw them in the fire. You can read 1,000 books on public speaking, but until you go and conquer your nerves and speak in front of a group of people that you don't know, you're never going to learn. And here's the funny thing: um, go knock on 10,000 doors. That's not going to pay your bills. But if you do all of the other things, talk to for sale by owners, build a network and a sphere with the small amount of people that you can get to know through your daily interactions at the grocery store, at the library, at the gas station, you're going to do business with some few basic people along the way. Go to networking events. My journey through public speaking was also a large tool, leveraging the people that I met through that public speaking journey that saw me grow personally, that
Yeah.
respected me for my courage, that ended up trusting me with the sale of their home later, months and years later, um, as a
That
start.
and it's you're building a foundation for the long term. It's
Yes.
not a quick fix. Becoming a listing specialist a is not a quick fix. So you do
No.
need the buyers in order to supplement your income
Mhm.
while you're building that listing foundation, and that's where social media comes in, like
Yes.
all of the online ads and the promotions and that type of thing. So I love the fact that you talk about get a suit, get something that dresses you up. And I know for a fact over at Nordstrom Rack right now, men can get these really great Steve Madden shoes. They're on clearance for 25 bucks. So you can look good, right? When you show up. What's really fascinating is especially for a lot of men, they don't, you think about it. you're not having to go in and do cosmetics and wear pantyhose and stuff. Whereas women, we are introduced typically, not all women, but typically we're introduced to cosmetics at a very young age. And that becomes like an armor. And that's where the suit comes in. The suit, when you don't have confidence, the suit will help store up your confidence from the exterior. It's like an exoskeleton, right? 10,000 doors, just so you know, folks, 10,000 doors at an average of 8-year turn cycle. So that's our statistical average that a home will turn over every 8 years in Canada. I believe that leads to every year out of 10,000 doors. Let's do what's that? 8 years. I think that's going to be around something like 170 properties will go for sale within that 10,000 doors. If you're knocking on those doors or serving those
Yeah.
doors, you can do, no, it's more than that. Sorry. Put another zero behind that. 1,800. I
Kim,
apologize.
Kim, I must say, I'm really impressed by your ability to rattle off the numbers and your ability to stay organized as an extrovert. Because as an introvert, I'm very numbers oriented. So I really appreciate that. But the truth is, I want to share us quickly on that. Knocking on doors, cold doors.
Yep.
I had to knock on 4,000 doors to talk to 1,000 people because only 25% of them were home to make $10,000 in commissions. And I
Yep.
figured it out. It was less than minimum wage for the time spent. It was $2 for every door, whether they opened the door or they didn't. But this is funny because Ricky Caruth, he's now with EXP, he talks about doesn't matter how many people you need to talk to that day. If you can build 5 new friendships from your interactions with people at the door
Yep.
every single day for a year, you're going to have 1,000 people in your sphere of influence.
Exactly. Well, and I went about it slightly different because, believe it or not, as an extrovert, I wasn't comfortable like knocking on the door. So
Yeah.
I did door hangers, and I did door hangers within my thing that I loved. And I personally
Yes.
delivered those for the first 3 years of my career. And so I got organic conversations. I had so
Yes.
recipes.
Yes.
Recipes were on
Okay.
my door hanger. I had 500 doors that I served every single month. I could serve those 500 doors in 7 hours of walking. My glutes, oh my God, getting those stairs up and down. Nobody needs a gym membership if you're delivering your own door hangers.
But you know what, Kim? The fact that you are an extrovert, here's what I know. If you're delivering flyers, you're probably having more conversations than I am knocking on the door because every person walking the street gets a hello from you.
Yes.
Right? Right?
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
yeah, but whereas an introvert, I'm robotic. I walk by everybody to go to the door. I'm like, I walk by 10 people over here at the car
But
to
what
go
was
knock
on
on
your
the door.
flyer? What was on your flyer?
I used business cards and I said hello and tried to collect
Okay.
contact information, follow up with house phone numbers.
So here's a tip for new agents. So new agents, we've gotten a tip. 1, don't allow your spheres to limit you and how you build your business. 2, get out in your communities and start having conversations. Conversations lead to contracts. Period. Period. Point blank. You cannot close contracts if you do not have conversations. And there is, even if it's warm conversations, only 5% of those will actually transition over into a contract within that 90-day or 6-month time frame. So how many conversations do you have to have in order to reach your numbers? But I will tell you how you engage people. If people are meeting you on the dog walking park, they don't want to talk houses with you. So you close a conversation down by limiting the conversation opportunities. I really encourage people to lean in deep as to what you love. What do you love, Chris? What's your favorite hobby? Are you a Dungeons and Dragons kind of guy? You don't look like it.
You know what?
But what do you love to do?
I'm a slight nerd. I like Marvel movies. Um,
Awesome.
but that's not a hobby. I grew up in BC, right? So I like snowboarding. The only thing is I don't often go as much as I would like to.
Yeah.
But my wife and I, she's a flight attendant with WestJet. So we've been together for, well, since I guess 2008, 2009. And but as soon as I started in real estate, we traveled quite a bit. So we went overseas. We've been to 38 countries. So that was a big part of our I guess you could say my hobbies for the last number of
Very
years.
cool.
I really miss the mountains in terms of like getting out snowboarding. That's why I love Calgary too.
Yeah.
Because it's the drive away. You could do a day trip if you really wanted.
Oh yeah. But you're talking to a Kansas girl. We drive everywhere because until like in the last decade is the only time that all the airlines start expanding and flying into Kansas. I would say if I was Chris, if the one thing that we all have in common when you're talking to the homeowners is like the honeydew list. What should be doing this month in order to increase the value of property? Most people don't realize that 3% of your home value should be reinvested every year into the home. And that's a statistical average. Some years you won't put any money in, some years you got to put a new roof on. But it's amazing how many, especially new Canadians, don't understand how to care for a Canadian home in order to uh, increase the value of that home, or at least stay on par with what the industry standards are. So, there's so many opportunities, but I would 110% agree, like unequivocally, not enough people. They're sitting behind the keyboard. This does not close deals, people. This is a tool. This is not a conversation. This is not
Yes.
a conversation. And I think that is the biggest thing that's really challenging for so many new agents, and what contributes to that 87% failure rate. The one thing you did was, throw on that suit and go out and talk to people. Let's talk. What are the other? So we've got put a suit on, go out and talk to people. Um, what is something else? So let's talk about scaling. I'd like to talk, because you've gone through, we've talked about the starting. What about somebody who is on the cusp? They've clicked over into that six figures, but we know going from low six figures to mid six figures is a huge push, especially in markets like where I'm from, Kansas, Saskatchewan, where the price is not, the commission checks are not going to be as robust. What are some of these strategies that you personally implemented? Because I know you're big into social media and into technology. Let's walk through that real quickly on how
Okay.
you scaled.
Well, you have to leverage, and I really like what you're talking about. Even social media itself is a tool, so it's going to help you reach more people. But you always have to take online conversations to offline, and take offline conversations to online. So the more conversations you can have by phone, the more conversations you can have belly to belly in person, the better. And so, like, if you want to scale the in-person side of what I'm talking about, which is always going to be the highest conversions when you're meeting with people in person, but you also have less time as a top producing salesperson, then hosting events can be one really great way to talk to a large number of people, or get in front of a large number of people in a shorter period of time. And that might sometimes take courage to speak in front of a group, but a lot of times these are people you already know. So back to the idea of public speaking, I think is really important for increasing your ability to communicate with larger numbers of people in person, and then applying, some basic social media strategy to what it is that you already do if you're not doing that already. And really, all I've done with social media, and I found it to be very effective for myself and for the rest of my teammates as well, is just applying the fundamental principles of what works in the basics of sales training, and just applying that to social media. So for example, you can post all day, you can spend all day in the news feed, but it's not until you have conversations with people by message that you're going to start creating relationships, and start, creating opportunities for yourself with the people in your network. And then you can go out and try to build relationships with people, brand new people, over and over again. But it's like, if you have 300 connections already, that might be all you need. You have 500 Facebook friends or 500 Instagram followers, that might be all you need. You don't know who that next big client is that's going to, open up an opportunity for you to sell multi-million dollar commercial deal, or for you to bring in your next superstar team leader that's going to help you increase and scale and level up to the next level. So it comes down to networking on social media with the people that you already know, adding depth to those people, staying top of mind to those people, using social media as a tool, not a solution. And I really like Facebook. To me, is kind of the backyard barbecue on your personal profile. It's, you're going to your friend's house to network with people you know of, people that you know. And then LinkedIn is kind of like the cocktail party. Everybody knows that we're there for business, but you're still meeting people. You're still there to have conversations and build relationships. And then Instagram, that's a whole different world in itself. But it's a younger crowd, right?
Yeah.
I feel like Instagram is I don't know if I can draw an analogy to it, and be
It's
politically
like,
correct.
yeah, 18 to 32, I think, is Instagram.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love the analogy backyard barbecue and cocktail hour. That is like, I've
It
never heard
is.
that before. It's brilliant. It's
Mhm,
brilliant. It also puts a pre-frame as to how the language you're going to use in your posting. That
100%.
is awesome. What's your favorite tool on LinkedIn?
It's the message feature. I mean, I like that when you post something, you can get more organic reach. I like that it's reaching out to connect and they respond to connect back. But as much as I believe LinkedIn is probably abused by the message feature, there's too many people that are like send you a 10-pound long message with a link at the bottom, and you're just like, they have to LinkedIn had to change their rules because of that, but it's creating organic, genuine conversations
Yeah.
through their feature that is really a powerful way to build relationships. I can be honest, like probably 10-15% of my business every year comes as a result of the relationships that I've built on LinkedIn, because it's always other business owners or professionals that are on LinkedIn to start with. And if you're genuine and open to having conversations, they're
Yeah.
looking to do the same thing on LinkedIn. It's pretty straightforward, I think, but it is work like anything else. Knocking on doors, it's work.
Absolutely, and being conscientious of your time is because the reality is that to do everything that's needed to be a successful real estate agent, at 60 or 70 transactions a year, you just cannot do it all. And so the conversation that you do is most important because that's the piece that's not irreplaceable, right? Somebody else can do the paperwork, somebody else can deliver the flyer, you know. Once you get, somebody asked me, well, do I continue doing flyers, once I start? I said, once you get super busy, maybe you only do flyers for 1 day a month for 2 hours just to stay present. But then you're also, and then offload the rest. You don't have to do it all the time. Um, the I wanna circle back to the events real quick, because we talked about how contacts equal contracts. These are just, it is a mathematical equation. National Association of Realtors says 5% of all warm leads close annually. This is this is just, I mean, you you can't we can't live in bubbles and think that we're going to be the exception to the rule. You're better to know what the rule is and make it work for you. Um, so events. S Talk to me a little bit about events. What are some different things that you think people can do on a business level, a community level, and a client level?
Yeah. So if you're building a team, like what you'd said, you might need somebody. The biggest problem, first problem realtors have is I don't have enough clients. The
Yeah,
second problem realtors have is I have too many clients. And so it's like you hit a wall where you can't grow anymore. So then now you need an administrative person. You might need an agent or a couple few agents to help you with some of the buyers that you have.
yeah,
You're going to need somebody to help you signs and lock boxes and all the different real estate things, photographers, all these things. So if you're looking for new talent in a real estate space, you can host events, and educate realtors and develop relationships with realtors, to attract new talent to your group. You can also ask your existing network, who they know that might be looking to get their license. But when it comes to generating new business or more business, you could do a home buyer seminar, or a financial literacy workshop with an accountant, maybe a home builder, maybe a financial advisor, a mortgage broker, and yourself. And all of you invite your spheres of influences so that you get, credibility to your own people, but also to their people as well. You get additional new exposure. And it doesn't really matter how many people show up to an event like that. It could be you each bring one guest, and it's a huge value add network roundtable discussion. And if they're coming to an event like that, then there's some interest at some point in financial related or real estate related topics. And then of course you can just do like what I call, it's kind of like an open house, like a come and go show. I did ice cream in the park this year. I've also done
awesome.
coffee and donuts at the golf country club. just invite everybody in your sphere of influence, everybody in the business community to come out and just,
Yeah.
show your appreciation to their support in your business endeavors. And it's such a feel good event. Do a draw for $500 for a charity that you don't have to spend a lot of money, but even if it costs you a couple few $1,000s, think of it. If you hired somebody to deliver flyers for $3,000, or you were to spend $3,000 marketing to your sphere of influence, I just know that the return, everything works if you work it, but I think the return's a lot better
Yeah.
in your sphere of influence.
Well, and a cold lead statistically will close at under 1% on average, and a warm lead closes at 5. So let's just do the
There you
math,
go.
folks.
5 times at
The-
least, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Just do the math. It's easy that way. Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who has a company called VT Members out of Vancouver, and they actually specialize in just assisting real estate agents with their paperwork, right? And I asked him, what is the greatest challenge? And a lot of agents don't document their system, right? And every agent works slightly different. We all have different language, we have different understanding of the systems. And he said that seems to be the biggest challenge, is that they're afraid that it's not going to get done the way that they get it done, right? When you first started, when you, Chris, started to kind of offload some of those duties, what was the greatest challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
Well, I had to learn how to be an employer. That was a big deal. Like, I mean, it's, hey, you have a staff person learning how to be what you need them to be, and you're trying to figure out what you need, and then to figure out how to be an employer. That was definitely a challenge. But the interesting challenge was, like I'd mentioned before, I'm also not good at paperwork. Like, I had to learn how to become a salesperson. I had to learn how to do paperwork. I make the joke that my dad was a millwright, and our filing system was like this wicker basket on top of the fridge with half opened mail sticking out of it and mail falling
Yep.
off the back of the fridge. That was how I learned how to do paperwork growing up. And so I'm again half sarcastically saying that, but like, my office back in 2013-14 was, first of all, our spare bedroom. There was no desk; it was a dresser. I had this little cheap printer, and that printer chewed up trees after tree after tree. And I had deals that were not in files; they were all everywhere. The first 5 deals I didn't hand in the deposit because I didn't know better. I was carrying around, 5 deposit checks the first 5 transactions I did, all within the same week. And so it was just, my paperwork life was a mess, and so I desperately needed help. My filing cabinet was an absolute bomb disaster, and it was largely by necessity, but it was a gift because it sort of forced me to, ask for help. So that was step one.
So so let's talk community real quick. What if you were to write the definition of community, what would it be?
um, I think that my first initial thoughts on community is leadership. If you're going to take part in your community, you have to contribute. And the idea of leadership doesn't have to be something complicated. It could be as simple as you being the volunteer in your community. So, for example, I always recommend agents volunteer for their local community association. If you are stepping forward as somebody who's willing to dedicate their time to increasing, growing, contributing to your local community, which is essentially the people, your neighbors, being a good neighbor in some sense. It doesn't matter what your experience is. It doesn't matter if you're day one. You are already a leader because you're dedicating your time towards something greater than yourself. And in doing that, the first impression that you give off to somebody you've never met who might have some relevance in your community, because those are generally the most generous people, are those with you know some sort of wherewithal. The first impression you get with somebody who has it together is 10 out of 10. And so it just takes you showing some initiative and contributing to other people that you really don't know in a large sense. And I feel like there's a certain amount of responsibility to contribute to your community. So that's kind of the first thing comes to mind for me. But really, it's at its most rudimentary sense, being a good neighbor. Everybody is part of your community in some sense.
I think you and I went to the same real estate school, just didn't know it. Because you know what, 110%. Everything Chris
But
said.
I want to say again though, so personalities. So we were talking about this. Kim is an extrovert, and I am an introvert. But look at this. I had to learn how to get out of my shell and communicate with people, etc. I can already tell that Kim knows her numbers. How many different times did she quote different facts and figures? And I find
Yeah.
this all the time. I talk to new agents that are extroverts, and they're great at salesmanship, but they don't know their numbers well enough. So they reach a ceiling because they
Yep.
don't know these activities bring these results. And this is what my time is worth in this activity. This is what my time is worth in this activity. You need to know your numbers in order to grow.
You have to know your numbers. You have to have your very clear and defined next steps, and you have to understand the conversations you're having and meeting the people at their conversations. I learned a very hard way that I had to reel the conversation in order to move into the next level with a lot of people, and meeting them where they are. And I think I hear that a lot of times from new agents around, "Oh, how do I get them over?" Da, da, da. I said, "The reality is the person that you met at your soccer club is not most likely going to be selling their house anytime within today. But if you're wanting somebody to list today with you, you're already too late to the conversation."
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the biggest misnomer in real estate is that we don't prime people to become listing specialists. We
Yes.
prime them to become uh, um, online lead generators for buyers, and that burns people out pretty
Well,
fast.
so let's talk about that for a second. A couple things. How easy is it to show a house to somebody who isn't highly motivated? All you need to do is say, "Hey neighbor, do you want to go look at a house?" Great. Do you need to buy a house? No. But as an agent, you feel like you're doing something productive, especially when you're new. You're getting out to see product. It's important to preview property. Um, but if you are going to say, "No, I'm not going to show that house because that buyer is still in preliminary phase," I need to educate them further before they're ready to get out and look at stuff. And I'd actually be doing them a disservice if I take them out to see too many houses before they're ready. In order to replace that time that you would have spent showing houses, now you need to be responsible enough to say, "I need to generate leads, quality leads." In order to do that, I need to maybe conquer my fear of rejection and pick up the phone or go knock on
Yep.
doors or go to a social event. And so
Yep.
that's the same when it comes to scaling your business. Instead of installing that sign, instead of filling out that data entry form, I'm going to hire somebody else to do it. And because I'm saving 2 hours, I'm going to spend those 2 hours now generating leads because that is the best use
Yeah.
of my time.
And folks, leave your house, go to the local coffee shop. Go sit in the local coffee shop, put your stuff out there. You need to be seen. You need to have those conversations. Remember, contacts equal contracts, and that is a fact. There's only, are you ready to engage? And that's the R, ready to engage. So, Chris, where can people follow you? Because you've got a lot of great insight, and you're still in the trenches of real estate, and you'd be a great person to follow. So share with us all your socials.
Yeah, so you can look me up on YouTube if you want to see what I'm all about. I put out one or two videos a week, all based around sales training, a lot of the conversation that we're talking about today. And then also on Instagram, I would say is the easiest way to connect if you want to have a conversation or to just really quickly see. I'm active on most platforms, but those are the easiest ways to communicate. Facebook itself is getting a little bit crowded, and then TikTok is kind of like I'm there, but it's kind of like it, it
Yeah.
it's a rabbit hole, so
It
I
is,
try to,
it is.
yeah.
The old scroll hole will get you every
Yes,
time.
that's right.
So, folks, that's if you're just listening in, that is, he goes, that statement is a TikTok clip. Let's see. I will look and see exactly where that's at, Kyle. That's hilarious. Um, it's Chris, Chris Molenaar, Molenaar. Do
Wonderful.
look him
Yes.
up. Books you recommend? You already mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What's another book you think all new
Oh
agents
man,
or scaling agents should read?
you know what? I'm so passionate about reading because it's been a huge part of my development. And it's kind of like I have to know what your goals are to be able to prescribe you the right book. But since we're talking about lead generating a lot, and that's kind of really the biggest problem agents have is where's my next deal coming from?
Yeah.
I will recommend a book that it's not a 10 out of 10 in entertainment, but it's like an 11 out of 10 in value, and that's Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. I recommend that to all new agents, and it just really breaks down the process and the approach to just talking to people, how to, why to do it, and kind of all the different along the way. Like social media is important, but it doesn't replace the phone call,
No,
right?
it's one of your spheres. And most people do, believe it or not, you just have to work at it, but you will find 5 or 6 spheres that you can work on a regular basis. Social media is a sphere of one piece of that pie. It's not the pie, folks.
Yes.
It's not the pie. I've closed more deals off of open houses than I have off of Facebook that I know of. So it just depends
Yeah.
on how you work it. Um, so share with us a quote. I always ask our guests to close us out on a quote that inspires you or gives you strength. The conversation code. Kyle said, so have you read the conversation code?
I haven't read it. Might have to put it on my list.
Conver- oh, the conversion code. Sorry, not the conversation code. The conversion code.
Yeah, I
Kyle,
haven't
if
read
you're
it.
still there, is that a book? Let me know. 'Cause that's, if that's a good book, then we know what Chris is gonna be reading this week, okay?
Yeah.
So we'll see if Kyle comes back in and lets us know.
Yeah.
Oh, conversion. Okay. This is what he said.
Yeah, I haven't read
Conversion,
it.
not conversation. Yes, it's a book. So, folks, there we go. This week, so we'll be watching on Chris's social media. He's gonna be reading the conversion code. Sometime by the end of the month. Can we challenge you with that, Chris?
Wonderful. You know
Okay.
what? Here's the honest truth. I'm at the point now where I choose a small handful of books and I still consume the content of a book a week, but I'm now studying depth and I'll read books over and over on repeat, study them. That's where I'm at now. So it's like, it's not always more information. Same thing with lead generation. You might only need 2 or 3 strategies that you get really good at. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to build a
Correct.
YouTube channel and door knock for sale by owners. Everybody needs a sphere of influence, but you really only need to get good at what works for you and find what works and double triple down.
Well, I'll tell you what, the conversion code, there is a program called Blinkist. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. Blinkist. And nearly every book you can run through that. Blinkist will help you shortcut the book. Oh, it's all about social media algorithms and how to master them. Oh, you know
Wonderful.
what?
It does sound like a worthwhile read. I think I will put it on the list.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on the list. Okay, Kyle,
Yeah,
you're a rock
wonderful.
star because that's
Wonderful.
actually we're working right now on the download code to crack the download codes for to go next level on our podcast. So I appreciate that, Kyle. That's awesome. All right, take us out with a quote. Give us a quote that inspires
Yeah.
you that can help
One of my
us.
favorites is Emile Coué. This is old, going back now. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. It's very simple, but if you continue to think that way, you're going to be growth minded. That's one thing. It's interesting. It's everybody that partners with us. The one thing that everybody has in common, whether they're day one or they've been in the business since day one, is growth mindedness.
Yeah,
And people that are like minded, regardless of where you're at in life, when you're growth minded, it's very relatable. So um, people of all walks of life, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better.
absolutely, and progress over perfection. So every day,
100%.
every way, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And just so everybody knows, and I say this all the time, if you have not listened in to the show, here's a new one for you. If you've listened in, go ahead, roll your eyes. But the definition of perfection is nowhere left to go, complete. and you're only going to be there the day you die, the day they're giving your eulogy. Everything else is about growing, because if you ain't growing, you are dying. That's a simple fact in real estate. So until next time, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your incredibly valuable time. Remember, folks, dress up, show up that you mean business. Go ahead and knock on some doors because you are an essential service. And get out of your comfort zone. Maybe host an event. Go to an event. Find some collaborators. Conversations equal contracts. These are facts, folks. So I know today has been awesome for me, and I'm hoping that you found it awesome for you too. This is 500 Doors Real Estate Podcast, and you can join us over at our Facebook group of Real Estate Success with 500 Doors. I'm your host, Kim Hayden, and thank you again for your time. Thank you for joining us at the 500 Doors Your Real Estate Podcast. Be sure to join our Facebook group at Real Estate Success with 500 Doors. Keep on watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, because we all know sharing is caring.